be starting shortly. While we wait, let's learn more about Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
All right, welcome everyone. Postponed meeting of December from last week because we didn't have a quorum, and so I appreciate everyone joining us today on the 12th of December, and it's 7 o'clock for the Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting. And I just, before we go any further, I just want to acknowledge Kristen Osterwood's input and time for this committee from the beginning. She has sort of officially stepped away. So I just wanted to take this time to say thank you to her and for all the input for the committee and her valuable insight. So I really appreciate that. So thank you for that. So that leaves us with a space. And and hopefully we'll have public member.
We've already worked this out.
Who will be joining us sometime soon. All right.
Only is Monday if you actually ask.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So welcome everyone. Nina is on her way, so she'll step in when she gets here. But otherwise, we're ready to go. So welcome Ryan as well, sitting here as a member of the public. And any comments before we move on through the agenda? Go on, Ryan.
Yeah, comments.
Yeah, please.
Yes, sure, please.
Just your name and address for the record.
Of course. My name is Ryan Jean. I live in Exeter in Hayes Park, and I last week got to spend some time with Renee Allen of the Exeter Energy Committee, and we spent some time at Exeter High School talking about electric vehicles and electrical vehicle charging with the Environmental Club, and it was a great experience. And I just wanted to put that out to this committee that having some type of interaction like that with local schools would be super beneficial for this committee, and I would suggest that they do that in the future.
Thank you.
Love it.
Yeah. We would love to work with the schools and just talk about, I know the school in town has a green club, which is really active, so it would be nice to sort of work with them for sure.
And you said it was Exeter High School's Environmental Committee?
Yeah, the Environmental Club.
Sorry.
After school, there were about 10 members there.
Great.
There were a couple students whose parents had electric vehicles, and some students who were just interested in part of the club to begin with. And it was a good event. John Brock was my science teacher when I was in high school at Exeter High School, and I've gone back a couple times to chat with some of the students there about sustainability, and in this case, electrical vehicle charging. And it was a good event, sweet, short, but definitely impactful from my point of view.
That's terrific.
And I had a great time doing it. So.
That's wonderful.
That's cool. Thank you. All right. Minutes from the November the 1st meeting. Any changes? Any comments? Are we good to approve?
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Our main action items is the single use.
Sorry to interrupt, but all in favor, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Aye.
All in favor. All right. So our main action item is the single-use plastic document. So we've had 2 public hearings. We've got one more happening next Monday, December the 19th. And if any residents are watching this, please do come along, and it's your opportunity to find out more information about the document as well as provide some input. So it'd be appreciated if you have strong feelings either way to come and join in next Monday.
Are there any other concerns we need to address that were raised by the board at the last meeting?
Yeah.
Yes, we have some great things to cover.
Great feedback, so that's coming up. Okay.
Excellent. Yeah.
So shall we kick off, Kristen?
Sure. I'm going to go up here.
Okay.
Is the clicker working for you tonight?
I switched it out for a different one. So as long as the batteries last, it'll work. So I thought I had kind of drafted some slides in prep for Monday. So I thought I'd just walk you through those slides because I think it'll address everything that the committees have recommended to this point and how I had incorporated some of their comments and also the financial side of it for Parks and Rec. So I'm not going to step through all of the parts, but basically at the select board meeting, there were a couple areas of recommendation for additional pencil sharpening and review and exploration. Some were modifications to the ordinance. We received some proposed language, clarification on the policy that Portsmouth has adopted. There was some, and I'll step through that in a minute, quantifying the financial impact to Parks and Rec, and then there were some recommendations for additional committee outreach. Oops. So the ordinance language did not change in the beginning. This is just the purpose and the definitions. And so this stands as well as it was before. So this is a prohibition on single-use disposable plastic bags, plastic food service products, and single-use polystyrene containers. And so the ordinance included a few exceptions: reusable bags, single-use compostable food service products, packaging material required for food safety reasons, and that has come up quite, I would say in every presentation, someone's asked, well, what about potato chips, or what about, other items? And so I think it's important that we understand that packaging materials added at the site of a processing facility is exempt. And then the other thing that is an exception are products where alternatives to prohibited items do not exist until an alternative is identified. The organizational exceptions that we've included to date, and this is in language that you all have seen before, but town departments and vendors can distribute their remaining inventory for 9 months following policy adoption. An organizational exception for emergency responders or human service nonprofit organizations. An exception for single-use containers brought by staff or customers, and that's also a frequent question that we get. Well, what if someone brings, their own soda from a nearby store? Is that an issue? And then the last one, Exeter Parks and Rec Department will work with the Sustainability Committee to develop a transition plan. And as you know, we've kept this very loose because we want the ability to work with Parks and Rec to bring this into fruition. And so that it's intentional that there's very little detail around that. But as you see, that'll come up from another committee in terms of question. At the select board meeting, it was recommended that we really look at this penalties and remedies section and take a different eye to it and have it be more educational. And so the language that I'm proposing for you tonight is to strike penalties and remedies and rename it oversight and enforcement. So item 1, reports of non-compliance with this ordinance will be directed to the Conservation and Sustainability Planner, that's me, who will work with the permittee or town department to find replacement products. Item 2, if reasonable replacements have been identified but infractions continue, the town considers this a violation of this ordinance and written warning will be issued. Town departments will meet with the town manager and Conservation and Sustainability Planner to develop a resolution. Upon second or subsequent infraction of this ordinance, the town interprets this as a direct violation of the vendor permit and cause for refusal to approve the use permit. So my hope with this is that it is more educational, so if somebody, we're not obviously policing events around town. I don't intend to be walking around. I hope no one does. But if somebody called me and said, hey, I saw this vendor or, this department distributing, plastic water bottles at X event, then my first step would be to contact them and just try to understand, what product they're using, using? What was the intent? Was there, a shortage? They couldn't get it in time, whatever. And then hopefully come to some sort of solution. If that's helping them source a product, I'm happy to do the work for that, or go to the list that we're slowly building for alternative products. So that's the language I'm proposing. I'm happy to edit, wordsmith. Obviously, item 2 needs to be corrected to if reasonable replacements have been identified. So been would be added in front of identified.
Overall, I think it's terrific. I really do. And I'm only stuck in one spot, and I only want to make it proactive, and that is the last word in 1.2. Town manager and conservation and sustainability planner to develop a resolution. That might still sound punitive a little, so I just want to, make sure that we're indicating that we're going to find an alternative material solution, a positive solution, let's just spend the extra letters to identify what kind of resolution we're aiming for, if that makes any sense.
So add.
Well, that's the question.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I did the easy part.
Right. To seek.
To develop a resolution is right, but I either want to define what the objective of the resolution
Seek
is.
alternatives, which are not single-use plastic.
Yeah, and or seek alternatives or something like that, yeah.
Seek appropriate alternatives?
Yeah,
To come into compliance with this ordinance.
yeah.
Yeah, to seek alternative, what was the word you just used? Alternative solutions or something, alternative solutions to come into compliance with the ordinance.
Because I think we know what you were trying to say. I just want to make sure that.
No, this is great.
Picks it up cold, they know what we're trying to say.
That's why we're here. Okay, so.
It's exclusive of everything that falls under 24.04, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and the only other thing I thought under 24.04, number 4, I would continue that thought to develop a transition plan to meet the ordinance, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, to Nico's point, do we want to add underneath 24.05, do we say subject to 24.04 in addition to any other penalty? To make clear that those are not going to be subject to enforcement, those 4 exceptions?
I think that's clear.
Okay.
Do you still want that in 24.05, which says in addition to any other penalty? Do we still want to use that word? We're having removed penalties from the...
Well, no, because I think what that says is by law for, oh, I see, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it specifically says by violation of this ordinance. So it's funny, I read through it 3 times, and what I walked away from it was, if they were having violations of this and they were also dumping trash, or they were all, I misread it like several times around. It's my fault. Because it is this ordinance is addressing.
Yeah, I mean, you could strike penalties.
Right,
We've gotten
yeah.
rid of, there's,
Or just start
I
with
actually think if you start
the
with
fa-
what Adam suggested was subject to, and then delete the in addition sentence and then just start in with 1, 2, 3, right?
well, you could say subject to 24.04.
saying excluding, isn't it? You're excluding.
Yeah, because that's the exceptions, so subject to 24.04, which are the exceptions. In addition to any other remedy allowed by law.
The following shall apply.
The following shall apply.
Right.
Yeah.
Or just subject to blah, 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 the following shall apply.
Right. Simplify it.
Yeah.
That's fine too, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Any other language that,
Point of order for the, it seems that, the Exeter Parks and Recreation Department can work with the Sustainability Committee forever.
Yeah, this is the hot topic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, do we want to put a goalpost out there?
Yeah. And I'm sure that you guys have talked about that as well.
No, it's a good one, though, yeah.
That, to me, it seems like you've identified a timeline already.
9 months.
Yeah, and said that this does not apply to the Exeter Parks and Recreation Department.
correct.
So should they be subject to the 9 months as well?
It says
I
all
think the
town
goal-
departments.
Yeah.
But you need to make sure you can reach that goal.
Right.
Yeah.
That's,
Different goal, maybe, but.
yeah, it's
goal nonetheless.
yeah, it's a bigger goal.
And I think it was intentional to not have it. So if we step back a little bit and think about the items that we still are trying to solve, it's not known that we can solve those in a 9-month period. And so that's why it was, there was not a timeline associated with it. We wanted flexibility. As we've talked about it in the past, Parks and Rec is more than willing to make initial adjustments, and that was they installed a water bottle refill station. They're willing to transition all of their other products. The 2 products that they're challenged with are the replacements for plastic water bottles and plastic Gatorade bottles. And so we do have some solutions, but from my perspective, the thought was we should put them in a position to test out these solutions and allow some time to do that. And so...
Yeah, so maybe we do need just some language at the end of it that says, a transition plan to meet the ordinance,
What's reasonable? What is reasonable? I mean, by the end of 2023? I mean, knowing the season of Parks and Recs in terms of the use of the pool, the season when it's open, and
I don't think
and
it's
the concession.
I don't think it's on a calendar, though. I think it's as the items are identified, because some of the items we'll identify immediately, and we could transition those in, and some of the other items are, might be more difficult to solve, irrespective of what the calendar is.
But then if they've got
I know.
inventory already, that is...
Sure, but I guess let's say they sold 3 things, and 2 of them I can get a sustainable replacement for between now and the end of those 9 months, then let them burn through their inventory, and they can still make money at the snack shack and all those sorts of things. But one of these other items comes packaged a certain way that they are, successfully selling, and we don't have an alternative for that. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the challenge. It's more the items than the time.
And I would say, so Parks and Rec is compounded because it's a seasonal activity, so their 9-month window is shortened, right? Just to a season. So that's to use up their inventory and test the financial viability of new products. And to me, and I know I'm not alone in thinking this, to me, that's just not enough time to test this out. So,
I think from a
oops, yeah.
I think from a financial standpoint, you're going to need at least the next year to get that analysis done in terms of finding and identifying sustainable products that you can sell in place of this. But then we need to look at how much are these going to cost, and how much is Parks and Rec going to lose in revenue, and what does the town have to do to make that up? So from a budget standpoint, that type of data and analysis is crucial. So I think that when you're developing the plan, and Parks and Rec have indicated that they're ready to work with you, come up with that. But we have to have that data, and we need to have that analysis for that. Also, as we're starting to put more water fountains out, that's also going to be a cost to the town. So I really do think that, when you're talking about 12 months, Kristen's right. It's a very, Parks and Rec, it's 4 or 5 months. So to have in our heads that we're going to need 2023 to work together to start this initiative and start identifying projects, but also get the data on the financial aspect and what are we going to have to do from a budget standpoint to make Parks and Rec whole. I think to have that extra time, or to have in the back of our heads that maybe it's 2024 that we're going full force with this, with the intent of starting now, of course, but having that year's worth of data and analysis to make sure we get this done right. I think that's important.
And I do think, and I'll step through this in a minute, but I do think even, I've spent a fair amount of time sourcing products, meeting with distributors, trying to get, how much shipping and delivery and what their maximum or minimum purchase number is. And what you'll see in a minute is for a full transition, we cannot meet the current income level that Parks and Rec gets from their products. And that's not a surprise, right? Like, they purchase water bottles at 12 cents a unit, and so and sell them for $1. So that's a huge income that we need to try to recoup. And so in my mind, really the only other solution is this committee working through the budget process and seeking supplemental funding. I don't want to show all my cards, but we'll step through it in a minute. I just can't unless, and I do have one more distributor who says that she's working on some numbers and thinks she can give me something, but I don't think we can get much better numbers than 53 cents a unit, and that's for cans, which isn't ideal. But so maybe what we do is put this section on hold, step through the products, and then we can come back. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Can I just quickly ask? So with Parks and Recs having put in water fountains in the different parks in town, and the one at the Rec, have they done any calculation in terms of, okay, so there's a water fountain going in at the Rec, the impact of that on the concession stands when it's open?
No, so the water fountain that were purchased and installed, Greg was waiting on some part that was unavailable during the season, so they weren't able to operate them last season. So that's kind of a part of that, moving piece that we need to figure out.
But what I'm saying is that they must have had some form of a discussion themselves to say, okay, well, if we're putting a water fountain here where people are going to be refilling the water bottles and getting water instead of purchasing from the concession, so that there must be some
So irrespective of a single-use plastic ban, whether it passes or not, this discussion hopefully may have happened. And then I was surprised the other night at the rec board rec committee meeting. The whole discussion of who pays for the water that comes out of the spigot. Well, that's a great question, but I mean, there's towns all over the planet that have water fountains.
But the way it's
this
set
is
up,
knowable.
But the way it's set up right now, it would come from Greg's revolving fund.
Right.
And so that's kind of the challenge that Parks and Rec are in. They have a very narrow budget. Chris can attest to this, being on the budget committee. They have a very, very narrow budget. The majority of the income that they bring in through camps and programming is used to fund the rest of the stuff. One of those rest of the stuff things is the pool, which is operating at a loss right now. And so they're kind of at this very critical juncture where a loss of anything could be critical to programming.
Sure.
Another comment that was brought up at the Rec Advisory Committee was, it doesn't feel fair for jacking up rates on camp programming to fund additional water that the public is drinking. And so I think the water fountain issue is bigger and broader than what, the single-use plastics. I think that will have to be resolved at some point, but it's really hard to do when you don't have numbers to put to it, right? So I don't have an answer. I don't know that Greg has done the calculations because I'm not sure how he would do that. We have looked at the library usage, but that's really high, right? I think higher than what we would expect for the concessions or the swimming pool area.
So to clarify that, so the fountain and refillable station at the library, you feel would be higher than would be the rec department?
Yeah, I can't remember if it was Matt Barabee who felt that, or if it was Greg. I think it was Greg.
Well, it would make sense, it's 12 months a year.
Oh, thank you. That makes sense. Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I was just also thinking too, though, that. Well, that's also true. But yeah, I'm just thinking about, games and swimming and summer and soccer and tennis and hot summer days and all that kind of stuff. And the total capacity of the rec center far exceeds the capacity of the library. And yeah, it actually might be closer than we think. But yeah, anyway, at least it's a number. It's something we can put in the ground and say, here's a starting point. But yeah, so I think what we maybe want to do is make sure when we're having these discussions, when we look at some of the things you worked on, that we clarify it both at the reading, and then if we meet with the rec advisory again, it's like, even if there isn't a single-use plastics ban, when we put water fountains in places like town parks, it's going to have an impact on the revenue. Therefore, I also would argue that we need to, Parks and Rec needs to be looking at fortifying, retail sales with other items that really, in my mind, takes the pressure off my precious plastic water bottle, because it's going to be impacted no matter what. So I would say, that's not as strong an argument anymore. And maybe if we play this right, if we do get the right screw top bottles, we can, charge that a little bit more, maybe even increase the margin, because we're going to leave the customer with something that's a little bit more useful, including the ones that are approved for refilling. So, we can kind of win both ways. We take some plastic out of the environment, and we actually provide the customer with something more usable that they can refill right there and help pay for the water along the way.
Yeah. But we don't have the answers to that.
No,
right?
No, we don't.
So I was struggling with that. I'll be honest, the unknown around not only the expense of a water fountain, but what loss of sales there will be from bottled water, even if it is in a aluminum container, what loss of sales there may be because of that. We don't know that. And so again, I think it comes back to reasoning why the 9-month period, in my mind, does not work. I do think, though, with seeking alternative town-supported public water sources, that was a charge that this committee prioritized for this upcoming year. I think that's something we work simultaneously.
Sure.
What are the other programs that they run at the Parks and Rec besides soccer?
Camp.
Is that a full camp there?
So they have summer camps.
At the rec building?
Huge.
So, this obviously isn't for us to solve, but I guess I'm just, piggybacking off Chris's comment, where there are other options that I've seen other organizations say, okay, your fee is $50, but we're going to lump in a $10 extra charge for you to get a water bottle that says Exeter Park and Rec on it. Could that get lumped in, and then everybody that's part of the program gets a water bottle, and then they're using the reusable water bottle as part of that? That's just one thought on that. And then for the other piece, I fully agree that we're not going to be able to get this done in 2023. So, if we can just add something in there saying that work to develop a transition plan, to come into compliance by, summer 2024, that might
Yep.
alleviate some of those concerns and give us the time that we need to be able to work with Parks and Rec to come up with, ideas for that.
Right.
Yeah, even if it's not a timeline, right? Even if it's like, even if there's words in there that pushing tension. So like, we'll actively work or we'll continually work with the Sustainability Committee to further this. It means that that this will not allow that to go stagnant. And to be like, we've tried, we've worked, there isn't a great solution. The continually or the actively word in there kind of forces that forward progression. Even if there is no definite timeline, which, there's been, a bunch of talk about how that it won't be something immediate, and that's understandable. I think all the reasons are completely acceptable, but I think that number 4 should push the continued effort rather than the timeline, maybe.
Agreed. Yeah.
So what if it was, revisit in 2024? So it's revisited perhaps by the select board as a discussion, as a threshold discussion point, so that we come back as a team, Parks and Rec, Sustainability, and present the information that we've collected over the year.
Yeah, so as Ryan said, we can put in the word actively. We'll work actively with the Sustainability Committee to develop transition plan and revisit January 2024.
Yeah, but between that, I want to make sure that we're identifying that we will, but adopting alternatives as they become available.
Yeah.
I don't want to use that as an excuse to keep plastic bottles going out.
Yeah.
If we prove the math and we find a source for aluminum cans or Tetra Paks or whatever for those, I don't want to let that language let it not happen
Until 2024.
Yeah. So the expression of adopting alternatives as they become available needs to be in there, in my mind.
Yeah, I agree.
Or acceptable alternatives. Heck, Adam's a lawyer. He's going to get a lot of letters and lots of punctuation in there and semicolons. But I understand that it's both acceptable from a sustainability perspective, but also acceptable from a budgetary perspective, right? So it has to meet those two criteria.
Chris, I think that's right, and I just want to just speak generally, but something that, Adam, that you said triggered something, particularly with summer camp, but I think it's for all the Parks and Rec programs, right? The goal and the initiative of Parks and Recs is to provide recreation for our community at a cost that all folks within our community have the resources to participate. And so, even $10 extra on a water bottle, and I'm picking on that, but it's more global than that. You have to keep in mind too, with summer camp, sometimes you have families that have 3 or 4 kids that are going to camp. So it's not like sending one kid at this price. So every time you hike up the price, right, it could affect 3 or 4 times to a family. I have 2 active kids who use water bottles, but we're so active sometimes we forget them. And so there needs to be an alternative, and I think to continue working with Parks and Rec to have alternative sources, for hydration that are not in a plastic bottle, is our goal. But to get stuck with Parks and Rec and not have this great initiative go forward. I really, really want to stress, I think, to not put a timeline, but to start working with them, but know that there are going to be some wrinkles to work out. We also want to make sure that whatever we're providing at the concession stand in whatever alternate form these liquids will come in, still need to be at a price that's affordable for all folks in our community. We don't ever want a kid, particularly at summer camp, to have to choose between eating and hydrating. And I don't think that would happen. But, at some point, as Kristen said, Parks and Rec is going to have to eat some of that cost, or we're going to lose some of that revenue back to the budget. Then we have to find a way to make Parks and Rec whole, because their budget is just so slim. So just want to add that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think just on that point, I think the last thing that anybody on this committee wants to do is to add increased costs to families or to have any reduction in Parks and Rec budget that do a great service to this community. And I don't think that's the intent of this committee at all. So if there has to be some give and take, then I think, we certainly want to make sure that the community is taken well care of as part of this. So at least that's my personal perspective.
Absolutely.
And I think that goes for all members. But
I think there's ways in which you can provide reusable water bottles. Like, if all the campers get T-shirts to be part of the camp, instead of providing T-shirts, if they're given, reusable water bottles as a.
The T-shirts are for field trips. That's not for summer camp.
They don't get them for summer camp, though they did get caps, but.
For field trips, they wear them.
And Greg has in the past provided reusable water bottles. He's willing to, I think it stopped because of COVID. He's willing to bring that back again this year. The other thing that was insightful to me in listening to the Rec Advisory Board, there was a member who works a snack shack, and she said the majority of our water sales are not the camp kids. They are people who come to the park. And so reusable water bottles for campers is not necessarily the end-all be-all. Maybe having a reusable option that you could purchase there would be great. But Stacey, I'm going to put you on the spot if you don't mind. You had a really great idea, I thought, in terms of helping to offset costs, kind of along the lines, Adam, that you raised.
Yeah, I had a few. Well, Parks and Rec, because just my family, my daughter's in soccer. My husband signed up for the basketball team, and we joined the pool. And is that the one you're talking about? Okay. And he actually is the one who bought it. But I was thinking that when someone signs up, there's just an option on the bottom to say, and I forget the verbiage I used, but basically say, we are putting forward this ordinance that Exeter, we feel strongly into, to eliminate single-use plastics. We don't have the budget to go full scale. Would you want to put an optional donation? And then people can put whatever they want. There's no pressure at all. But I know I always like any kind of sale online. Like if there's a charity or something, I'm always putting you can put $5 in, and that would just my family, that would be $20 extra for.
That's a very powerful suggestion.
Yeah.
You go to RJ, you round up to your next dollar, and Boston Children's Hospital, whatever the fund is. I actually think that's a fantastic suggestion, and I think that's how the community should work together. It's the people that can chip in that extra buck will help the people that can't chip in the extra buck. I think it's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
And it also goes, I think, we could also, some of us could go to Hannaford's, or you mentioned RJ's, and say, hey, could you pitch in $250, $500 or whatever, and see if we could help raise some additional funds, whether it's for the water bottles or to sponsor somebody at the rec center or something like that. Use a clean water, reusable water, getting rid of the plastics kind of initiative. Maybe some of the larger businesses in the neighborhood would chip in, and then we could get a logo on a water bottle, Hannaford's, RJ's, whatever it is.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And actually, we're headquartered to a lot of good corporate citizens that would step in.
A lot of really good,
exactly.
Sustainable committees.
But that's an effort to be made. I know you've looked at some of that as well, Kristen.
Yep. So do you want me to step through some of the financial options?
I had one question on this. Is there a process for working with Parks and Rec? Should we put touch points on once a quarter they'll meet to go over everything, or is it just free, just as it comes in, we're meeting with them? But should there be any checkpoints to keep accountability that?
I think we'd be most informed to revisit at the end of the season.
Okay.
But
okay.
We can put, whatever you guys think.
Yeah, I do wonder if that language, well, that's the right practice. I wonder if that language belongs in the ordinance. I think it's just a good practice to pursue and make sure that, that we're super diligent to follow up, because we're incentivized as a community to get it done.
And Parks is as well.
And Parks is as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So are we changing the sentence on number 4, or are we going to leave it as is? We're going to put in adopt and actively work, or adopt as
acceptable alternatives are identified.
Without the time frame.
Yeah.
And actively work. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Oops. Portsmouth adopted we talked about this in the past, Portsmouth adopted a zoning ordinance in 2019 regarding single-use plastics. It was twofold. It was townwide, and then it was citywide, and then city property, recognizing that they didn't have the authority to enact it citywide. In 2022, and there's actually, So this was shared by, I believe, a member of the Parks Advisory or Rec Advisory Board who works for Parks and Rec in Portsmouth, and I can pass this around. But it was a city council policy that was ratified in 2022, January 2022. And there was question based on the language that was in there, is that, because at the beginning, I think it's the first paragraph, insinuates almost that this is recommendations. It's not enforceable. And so I did reach out, but at the bottom, it was confusing when we met with the select board, because at the bottom, it also references the ordinance policy. And so I reached out to the health department, because that is who implements the ordinance. They're the ones charged with enforcement. And I meant to re-look up her last name, but her first name is Kristen. She's the deputy health officer, and she said, yes, it is absolutely an ordinance that I am charged with enforcing. It sounds like maybe it's not enforced, strongly, much like ours is, more educational. It might function that way, but it is an active on the books regulation that that entities are there to comply with. All right, so the financial impacts, and this might take a little bit, and I can step back from the numbers if they're a bit much, but I went through an ungodly number of scenarios trying to make this work, and I have a Google sheet that I've cleaned up, but I saved all the work because I didn't know if we'd need it again. I stepped through a variety of scenarios, and those scenarios are full conversion, no price increase, sponsorships, a minimal price increase, alternative product sourcing, providing reusable bottles in lieu of bottled water, etc. And so what I'm presenting to you right now are what I believe the most viable options. There are other options, and I can bring numbers up if there's some things that you want clarification on. As it stands today, Parks and Rec, between water and Gatorade, they earn a profit of $23.84. So that's
their net.
That's their net. That's our target. So we're, at the end of the day, that's what this is coming down to, right? And so I looked at the option, the cheapest source of aluminum bottled water that I could find is a product called Open Water. It's a local distributor. It's not being shipped from far, far away. They actually reached out to us after the article was published, and she's been great to work with. And so when I work an Open Water aluminum water bottle and those same units of aluminum water bottle with a powder Gatorade packet, so Parks and Rec for $1 would sell the aluminum water bottle. If someone wanted Gatorade for $2, they'd sell the aluminum water bottle with the packet, same price. And so the caveat here is in order to get the pricing that they're offering, you need to order 2880 units, and Parks and Rec needs 2300. Okay, so 2800 versus 23. Parks and Rec also, they don't have a distributor that brings materials to them. They go and they purchase a couple cases of water. And Greg had said that they don't, at the concession stand, have a place to store it. So this is a pallet of water, you picture a pallet size stacked. Actually, technically it's 2 pallets. If we bought 4 pallets, we could get the price even better. But anyway, so location for storage is an unknown. Absolutely. I don't know what, the new Hampton Road site can offer. I don't know if it's something that we can store down here in the Bay. I don't know. But assume that we can resolve the storage issue, because I'm hopeful that we can. If we sold them with no price increase, we would lose $199 and be under the table from what they're doing now, or under the mark from what they're making now by $25.83. But because you have to buy more units, there is the potential for them to then sell those other aluminum water bottles for other events that Parks and Rec holds, and maybe won't be held to the same $1 standard of sale. And so I ran it with, if they sold them at $1.50 a piece for 580 units, you're still in the hole, but much less in the hole from the profit, from the current day profit. But it's cash positive, right? They're not having to pay to implement this program. They're just losing the revenue. And I don't mean just as a menial thing. It's a big deal.
Understood, yeah.
If they sold it at $2.50, you bring that down to just over $1,100 loss of profit. So that's scenario 1. It's not ideal, right? I will say that, well, I won't go there. Sorry. No, I will go. I will say that Sustainability Committee has a line item in their budget, right? Maybe that's something this committee is willing to sponsor for a year or until we can go through the budget process. I don't know. That's something that we could discuss in the future, I guess. Okay, so the next scenario is a 50-cent increase. So instead of, and I know this isn't palatable because we want to make sure, we've heard this a number of times, we don't want water to cost more than soda, because then kids won't choose water. But this is a 50-cent increase in water and a 50-cent increase in Gatorade. I have not spoken with Greg to know how palatable that kind of cost increase is. But let's step through that. So again, the same scenario, aluminum water bottles with Gatorade packets, you would have a loss of current day profit of $1,400. If you sold, we'll just step to the $2.50 sales of the remaining 580 surplus units, you could actually earn $16.80 more than his current day profit of selling water and Gatorade. So,
Christian, sorry, can I,
Yep.
so the income that you're talking about, was that from this summer? Was that
The 2384?
that was the 2020, what year are we? Last year's
2021
sales.
or 2022?
2022, I believe, sales.
Summer of 2022
Yes,
this year.
yes.
Do we have any numbers from before, like pre-COVID?
2019?
I don't. I just have a target. I just have that target, and that's what I've been going
No,
on.
it's okay.
1,500
That's okay.
units and 800 of water and 800 units of Gatorade. I don't know what, I'm sure it goes up and down.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So the next scenario, if I don't know the capacity of Parks and Rec to sell those additional units, but I do know that they hold other events.
Sure.
And so that's something that I really want to meet and talk with Greg about, and I have not yet, like I mentioned. Alternatives that are perhaps less desired, but maybe more desired than a complete exemption of Parks and Rec through this process would be to, so this gets to the sponsorship that you had mentioned. There is an opportunity to purchase this product called Chameleon bottles. They do custom labels. And so they come in quantities of 1712, which is less than our target quantity of 2,300. But if we converted everything up to the 500, everything up to 1712, I'm not saying this very well.
Understood, yeah.
If we use all of those aluminum water bottles to either sell Gatorade or water, and I've assumed that we'll sell the cheaper one just to make the numbers conservative, that would mean that they would need, under last year's sales, to sell 588 plastic Gatorade bottles. That cost could be offset under this scenario with 6 sponsors at $200 a piece. I was having a hard time finding what I thought was like a palatable number. I don't know who this might be. You know, maybe we could increase the sponsorship and double the units, but I don't know. So I just thought worst case scenario. In my mind, I can think of probably 6 entities that would contribute. But I also know that Parks and Rec relies on sponsors for a lot of different things. So, but if that were implemented, that could have a net profit of $88. The nice thing about that is, you know, I think it would grow interest in getting their names on the label, right? And if it's a new sponsor each year, I think there might be stronger interest. So anyway, so perhaps in future years, if storage was addressed, we could double the purchase of the custom aluminum water bottles. And then the last one, this is if we wanted strictly net positive from the get-go. The only way I could see to achieve this is if open water also comes in cans. That's by far the cheapest. They come in 2,100 unit capacity. This would mean just replacing strictly the water. That would mean they'd still have 800 plastic units that they sold if we went under last year's sales. But we could be net positive from the get-go, or we could add the sponsorship in. But this does not add a custom label. So whether they would do that or not, I don't know. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. This was not sponsorship. This is, they'd have 600 remaining units.
To sell.
To sell.
Okay.
And the reason why I didn't combine Gatorade and the cans is you can't physically do, like, I don't know how you'd physically do that. You can't reclose
Well, you
them.
sure couldn't shake it up, could you?
So, okay, so those are kind of the 4 scenarios that I walked through. Full conversion, no price increase. Worst case scenario, $2,600 loss of current day profit. Full conversion, 50-cent increase. You can go from a loss of $1,400 to a profit of $17. So if we're, one scenario is still continuing to sell 588 plastic units with a sponsor. It could be a loss of $1,100 up to a profit of $88. And then the 800 plastic units, which is the can conversion, is strict profit.
It's interesting, and obviously, and there's 1,000 shades of gray in between each one of those, any combination of those, right?
Absolutely.
And I can easily imagine a scenario where screw-top aluminum bottles are sold alongside current plastic bottles, and what's interesting is, my 35 years in the private sector dealing with consumer habits and how they make choices, consumers usually decide, and I have a sneaking suspicion if after a summer we lined up those 2 things side by side, we'd actually reap enough profit from people choosing the right thing to do in the refillable aluminum bottle that would easily pay for us to be able to provide either pop-top can water for people that need it, when they need it, or slowly phase out the screw top bottle. I think there's some really good work you did here, and I see some blending opportunities here, and that's inspiring to have the conversation with Parks and Rec, because I think there's some really, without even, and I also agree with you that I think we're aiming low. I think you could find a corporate sponsor in town to subsidize the whole shoot and match, for sure. This is great work. Thanks for that.
So I hope with those numbers, one, it puts some context over what is it we need to work towards supporting Parks and Rec to find alternate funding on, what that target point is, assuming current day sales, but also either ways to open the door to blending options or full conversion with some additional support coming from somewhere.
So the money they make, what does that actually go towards? Because obviously there's fluctuation in those sales, because you're not going to get that 23.
Right. So all of those operations are funded through the Parks Revolving Fund, and that's what they do that's what they use to do everything, pretty much. Everything that you see that Parks and Rec does, if they're replacing equipment or painting benches or whatever, it comes out of the Parks Revolving Fund versus the town budget. I don't know. Maybe you could speak to that better, Chris, than I can.
Well, from what I understand, that goes right back to fund the shortfall, that pool and other things that get created. I'm still stuck here. And obviously, this is just an excellent bit of work on just water, not other things in the snack shack, not additional items to create additional revenue to offset water, not nothing along those lines, right? So there's 1,000 ways to slay this dragon right here, and I honestly think that if we only do it with blinders on with just water, we're selling ourselves short. I actually think that there's other ways to solve this, even if you had units for sale, because while I agree that we do not want to put a financial pinch on families, it's already hard enough, and everybody's going through the same recession right now, or tight times right now, and inflation that we're looking at. I do believe that there's a reasonable number of families out there that would pay for interesting things, a nice Hydro Flask or something with the Exeter Parks and Rec on it, that the profits from that would subsidize that. So I think there's other ways to do this in addition to this. I actually think it's funny, because my look at this every time I look at this is I see this as a way to make more money for Parks and Rec. I don't see the panic. I see it the other way around. I'm not sure.
I do too with that. Yeah, opportunity.
I see the opportunity, yeah.
Okay, so then I also wanted to talk through a couple. So the other thing that the select board wanted this committee and myself to do is really make additional connections with the public. There was an article in the newspaper. It came out on November 29th, shortly after the select board meeting. It talked through, I hope you have a chance to read it. There is a link. I can share the link to the slides. There is a link on there if you want to read the article, but I thought it addressed everything pretty well. The other thing was a presentation to the Rec Advisory Board. So Chris went to that meeting on November 29th. I would encourage you to listen to that meeting. It was insightful to me. There clearly is a struggle right now, I would say, for Rec. One, they had to decrease their budget this year, their budget ask, which is hard for any department. Two, there is this need to protect the revolving fund because it is their only source. And that clearly comes out in that meeting. But bottom line, and Chris, maybe there's more than this. I just tried to capture some major points. Or do you want to give? Okay.
No, I think you've done a great job. I mean, I guess what I took away from the Rec Advisory Board meeting was, to a person, everybody liked the idea. They're on board with the concept. All their concerns are laced here, right? Impact the revenue stream was number one, and burdens to families for any increased costs. Those were probably the two biggest ones that were there. And there was some ask to, why don't we just wait till we solve the problem, then we put an ordinance in place. But there was also some agreement that if you don't have goals, what are you driving towards, right? right? If you don't have a point on the map, if you don't have something to aim for, it'll never get done. I'd be right back there a year later. The impact to vendors at tournaments came up because, one of the things that probably needed some clarification, but I think it's clear in the language of the ordinance, but I think you just have to understand that not unlike a vendor on Swayze Park, if you are a vendor at a pickleball tournament at the rec, you're a vendor, and if you're going to be distributing, that means either giving away or selling anything that has to meet the guidelines. But we talked through that, and the way it's currently written, even if we didn't change the language, and it wouldn't be for those vendors anyway, we still have 9 months from when this is enacted, if it gets enacted, to have those conversations with all those vendors to say, hey, and the next time you come, next year when we see you in 2024 for the Super Championship of Pickleball, you have to be distributing this stuff in things. So we have the opportunity to talk to them when they pull a permit this year, to talk them through that. If they can make changes this year, great. If they can't, we have the opportunity to shorten that for next year. So I felt that one kind of went away when we talked it through. It wasn't that big an issue when people understood it. So.
Yeah, and so to me, the biggest surprise was, and it makes sense after hearing it, members expressed a concern. They said, yeah, the language, the flexibility in the language, that's great, but it can also be used to the detriment of Parks and Rec as well. And so I think there's community support and trust that we need to build here.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great process to do that through. And so I come back to, let's move forward, but let's move forward with a soft touch, I guess. And I know oftentimes that appears to be me, I don't know, granting Parks and Rec some slush, but I think that they're going to be our biggest, just like they did for the Chili Festival, I think they're going to be our biggest example of success. And so I really strongly believe that it's that partnership that will make this work successfully.
Agreed. Yeah, I think the hard part is it's difficult to have the language reflect that
Right.
willingness. But Greg and team have been super into engaging on this and super helpful. So, I guess that's the question I have for my fellow committee members is like, how do you address that in the language? You have to have some teeth in the language to actually achieve what you're trying to achieve. Yeah, when I see that again, I keep coming back to, a transition plan and with articles to be implemented when they're identified, and when acceptable alternatives are identified.
I think I like that. Can you say that again?
Oh, I hope so. To develop a transition plan and implementation of. With the implementation of
Alternatives as they appear.
As are identified, yeah. And I think, as you were just saying, I think there's strong willingness, and we know what the parameters are. It's got to make financial sense, and it's got to make sustainable sense. And until we check both those boxes on each of those articles, then until we hit that goal, then there you go.
Maybe putting something, if that's our biggest concern, the financial, then maybe putting like that exact thing, like it meets financial and sustainable. I don't know,
Yeah, we mentioned that. You're right. We mentioned that in the meeting. I mean, it really comes back to the 3 key points of sustainability, right? Social sustainability, environmental sustainability, and fiscal. But yeah, I think maybe it needs to be reflected there for sure to meet or beat the budget.
Okay, so then I'm hearing Exeter Parks and Rec Department will work with the Sustainability Committee to develop a transition plan
Can you say it a third time?
Play the tape. To develop a transition plan.
Alternative, that's what it is.
Implementing.
Alternative.
Acceptable alternatives as they're identified.
With the goal of meeting financial and sustainability
Goals.
with.
Yeah, maybe budget. I think like being as clear as possible,
Yeah.
like meeting or beating the budget, like just being really, like very clear.
So I would recommend, because so I feel like their budget might flex, right?
Sure.
Like they're
Yeah.
implementing other things that may or may not affect their current budget.
Right.
How do we kind of getting back to what you had mentioned in the beginning, Chetna, how do we tease apart the loss of revenue from the water bottle, which refill station, which I think Greg would have put in anyway from implementing this product stuff. So maybe just a financial goal
Yeah.
Yeah,
rather
financial
than
goal, yeah.
budget.
Because we may have to solve it, like you
budget
said, other ways,
spells
whether it's
number.
sponsorship or whatever, there
Yeah.
might be different ways to slay this, yeah.
And, you know, Kristen, in another year, that storage issue, once 10 Hampton Road is up and running, may no longer be an issue.
Right.
But you may need that extra year before 10 Hampton Road is.
Right, yeah, I mean, in my mind, if we can fit, and, you know, if we could fit a pallet downstairs and he comes here to grab his couple cases versus going to the store,
That
yeah,
building, it's-
right.
It's not ready. It's
Right.
timing is-
Okay. All right, that's all I have on that.
Is that all? Just kidding.
Or, I hope so.
That was great. Thanks so much for all that,
Thank you,
all that
Kristen.
homework.
Yeah.
Oh, so, I'm sorry, there's one more thing. So Tuesday is the first available meeting of the Exeter Art and Culture Commission?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Tuesday.
Tomorrow.
Stacy had said that she can be there. I have Concom at 7, but they meet at 6:30. And so I think we have it covered. If anyone else wants to come, you're welcome.
I can make it.
That would be great. Yeah.
It's at 7,
6:30.
6:30.
Yeah, so
Don't want a quorum.
right, that's a good point. I believe it's downstairs in the wheelwright room. Right, no more than 3 of you all. We can't have a quorum. We can't have 4 members, otherwise we would have needed to post it as a sustainability meeting. But I did talk with Scott Ruffner. He said he can put this topic at the beginning, and he's really just looking for a presentation of the ordinance, and I suspect there will be some questions like the things that we've talked about here. In the spreadsheet where I did all the calculations for Parks and Rec, I have another tab where I've been listing some sources.
I saw that, yeah.
And so we're building that. That's a shared document. You can add to that anytime. So if you have, after this meeting, I'll send everyone a link to that share drive so you can add stuff when you come across it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristen. Any other comments on this before the presentation next week? Our third public hearing.
Do we need to move to adopt those changes, or are we okay?
I think it would be
It's a good idea.
I think it would be helpful, yeah.
Okay.
And then all vote.
So I move to adopt the changes we just discussed as notated by Kristen.
I'll second that motion.
Everyone say aye.
Aye.
Accepted. Thank you. All right. So give us a recap before of whatever comes out from the meeting tomorrow, and then if we need to sort of again.
On email, just,
Yeah.
okay.
So
Or just, if you send it to me, then I can send it to everybody just to keep it.
I have one, as all these different groups are sort of addressing their concerns and stuff. I did talk to Meals on Wheels and a while ago now, before our last meeting, but and the director who I spoke to, I know it's somebody right now, but she's not in the area. She's over in one of the towns over Rockingham. But anyway, she was very interested and supportive of the initiatives, but it did come to the attention that they in fact, use tons of single-use plastic. So I think, and being on town property, of course, that is going to become sort of a thing that will, I guess, address these issues.
Yes, and one of the exceptions in 2404 is human services,
Right,
which they fall
right.
under. So, and we've also made the pledge to work with them as vigorously as we could, but again, it's one of those things where they're fully exempted
Right.
because we understand their supply chain is
Right.
vast, and they, and they have a lot of those issues, so we'll do what we can.
No, she wasn't, and there wasn't a concern with that, it was also more of, here's an opportunity to work with this group, and she was very willing.
Oh, great.
To, come up with alternatives, and as I was talking to her and asking her questions about, we were identifying even more, oh, yes, that's, yes, that's styrofoam, that's this, that's that. So somehow in our plan to, and I know that we are coming up with alternatives for different groups and stuff, but just because they haven't been as involved in this process as, like, say, arts and culture or parks and rec or something. So I guess just keeping in mind that aspect as well.
There is, so Beyond Plastics has a great model specific to Meals on Wheels, and it's basically a step approach. Like, it starts with inventorying. What are their units? What are the products? What do they need them for? How many? And the frequency. And I think they even have forms that, like, we could meet with, or a committee member could meet with Meals on Wheels and fill out the forms. I'd be happy to share that if you want.
Yeah, could you
yeah.
email it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that'd be good. Thank you.
Okay. Shall we move on? Everyone okay? Comfortable with everything? Okay. One of the other things that was on the agenda was to provide an email to do with the public safety complex building. So I know we haven't finalised or even started that yet, and to work with the Energy Committee on putting that together. So I think everyone received all the information emails that were forwarded to you. We wanted to do that soon.
Yeah, I think in fact, that's already passed now. The budget reading to the select board is, you guys have already heard from budget.
So the Energy Committee has already formally endorsed the project back, I believe, in October. There was an email to the select board that was part of a select board meeting. The Budget Recommendations Committee has recommended the project to the select board, so between now and the third Tuesday in January, the select board will be deliberating over the budget over our next several meetings. The formal public budget hearing is the third Tuesday in January, and that's when the select board go through all of the warrant articles, hear from public, and then vote to recommend or not recommend the warrant article. And the next step would be deliberative session, which is the first Saturday in February, and that's when the town moderator goes through the warrant. It's an open town meeting. Folks can get up, make comment, make amendments, so forth and so on. And then once that passes, then it goes to the ballot for the second Tuesday in March.
Yeah.
And currently, the Budget Recommendations Committee proposed a figure that was slightly higher than originally to ensure that the net zero option could be met.
And what I'd recommend, Madam Chair, is that because that was, I would call that pretty soft language in our recommendation, it's not really, identified. I'd recommend that this committee send a letter to the select board to clarify that net zero.
Yeah.
We asked that the select board, clarify the language that the funding, the additional budget as approved by the recommended by the Budget Recommendation Committee to achieve net zero status on the building is clarified either in the budget presentation and or hopefully to the warrant, if whoever writes the warrant article.
Yeah. Okay.
That way we're just clear on.
All right. So if I'll share an email, and then if you can then email me your comments, and then we'll finalize that.
Just remember not to reply
Yeah.
all. I mean, so if
Yeah, don't reply all.
probably it should come through you so that there's.
Yeah, we could do that. I mean, another approach would be for you to authorize somebody to, if you know in general what you want that letter to say, to authorize somebody to craft the language on your behalf.
Yeah, I was going to do that, and then I wanted to share it, the draft, with everyone to agree, and then it would be, but like I said, they would only reply to me.
But we can't have, I know this is nitpicky, but it's so we can't have individuals responding to you, even if it's not all in the same email, if they're all weighing in, that is a violation. So may I suggest that you send a draft to the committee, CC me. If there are concerns, reply to me with those concerns.
Yep.
All right.
Fair enough.
Okay.
It's a bit tedious, but it's the law.
Makes sense. No, it makes sense to me.
All right. Any other comments on business?
It's the only thing for 2023. I think we should reopen those grants that we were looking at originally, and I think we should keep that on the agenda, because it seems to me that there were a number of them that were available for communities to get involved, and I think that that's something that we should look strongly at to see if that could be used for the water fountains or for some other water-related issue, or but it seemed to me that there were good options out there.
Yeah.
The Energy Committee is having some guest speakers at their meeting on Wednesday, I think, from the National Building Institute. I forget what NBI stands for, to talk a little bit about this. And Ryan, you also mentioned adoption of the new building code goes into effect in January. So there's a lot of ramping up in terms of understanding what those changes are. That's not my area of expertise at all, but I'm happy to share resources, and I agree we should kind of keep that on the agenda so that we plug away at it.
Okay. If there's no other, just a reminder, the final public hearing for the ordinance is next week on 19th at 7 o'clock. If you want to come along, please do. All right. Is 8:19. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.